So now Valerie here is going to show us her runway walk. Now this is going to be the traditional runway that you're going to see at the fashion weeks or even at your local mall that you could be walking in. You never know. So we're going to start first of all with posture. It's so important that you have really good posture. So her neck is going, or her head's going to be perfectly over her neck, over her shoulders. Her shoulders are going to be aligned over her hips. Now we want to make sure that we're not hunched over at all. Sometimes people have a tendency to walk with their chins out a little bit. Maybe a little sway in your back. You don't want to have that. You want to make sure that you're perfectly proportioned and you have all of your weight shifted so that it's aligned down your back. Now, also when you're walking in a runway show, you can get distracted. There's going to be music, there's going to be audience, you're going to have that adrenaline rush. We want to make sure that we're not running down the runway. We want to make sure that we're not dancing down the runway or singing along to whatever song is on the runway. So you want to stay focused. But you also want to make sure that you're following whatever direction it is that you're given, because every show is going to be different. They're going to want something different from you every time. But you can always use your signature walk and then just add that to whatever it is that they're asking, whether it be tempo or a specific style. Sometimes they want you really happy, showing that you're enjoying yourself, and they want that little extra something. Sometimes they want you to just be very intense, very focused, and you're going to have to do that, and you just add it to the walk that you've already perfected that works for you. So now Valerie's going to show us her walk. Now you notice as she's walking that she's keeping her posture, she's keeping time. Now she's going to do a little bit of a pose at the end of the runway before she turns and walks. That is specifically so that way people get a good look at what she's wearing. That way photographers actually have an opportunity to snap those pictures that are so important. That is what the point of these fashion shows is. Don't forget, you're still selling a product. You're selling what it is that you're wearing. People are going to want to have an opportunity to see it. That's why you don't want to be running down the runway. You want to make sure that you're showing it in the most flattering way, that when you're walking, it's to the benefit of the clothes that you're wearing. There she is, just taking that moment, she's taking that pause, and then she's going to turn and walk back. And when she reaches the beginning of the runway where she started, she's going to do another pause, another pose. That way everyone gets one last look at that outfit before she exits the stage and changes into her next look. Now the other benefit of doing fashion shows is being able to see those clothes in movement, in motion, on a body, actually out walking in the world. This is a great way for designers to sell their products. This is how they showcase their fashions to buyers, to magazines, to consumers. She's doing her pose at the end of the runway, and now she's going to walk back. You notice she's not walking too fast. She's not dancing along. She's not swaying to one side. She's making sure that her hips are are perfectly aligned, that she's not clomping down the runway, that she has a nice stride, a nice even stride. It almost looks like she's gliding a little bit. She does have presence, there is intensity, there is purpose to her movement. You want to look purposeful. You want to look like you have somewhere to go, like you are really involved in what it is that you're doing, that you're really there, you're really loving what you're wearing, you feel powerful. You want to have that vibe when you're walking down the runway. You want to show that confidence. That confidence is so important, especially when you're on the runway. You're gonna have those jitters. You're gonna have that adrenaline. Use it. Use it to your advantage. This is another great reason that you want to have that full-length mirror at home. You want to be able to watch yourself go up and down that hallway. You want to be able to pick up on all the little things that you might be doing that you didn't know that you did when you were walking. That expression that you might get that you didn't realize when you're feeling really intense about something. These are things that you want to make sure that you know what you're doing so that when you go to the casting for these runway shows, you know exactly how you want your face to look. You know exactly how you want your stride to look. Now you can see when she poses at the end of that runway, she has it's almost like you're posing for for a camera, again, like at a print shoot. You're showing the clothes to the maximum benefit, that they're gonna look the absolute best at the end of that runway. They're gonna look the best on you. And having practiced your poses at home, you know exactly what to do. When you reach the end of that runway, you wanna have those few seconds. You wanna have that moment where you know you're gonna get a good still shot from those photographers at the end of the runway. You almost get a little bit of a satisfied feeling when you're standing at the end of that runway, knowing that everybody's looking at you before you make your exit. Because they're watching you that whole walk down and that whole walk back. And it's a little bit empowering. It makes you feel good. It gives you that confidence. But you can see that in Valerie when she's walking up and down the runway and she stops at the end of that runway to show that dress that she's wearing, that she looks good, everybody's looking, that she's making that dress look its absolute best. So sometimes you're going to be asked to do choreography when you're on a runway. And sometimes there's going to be more than one of you. And you're going to have to pass someone on your way down, on your way back. You want to make sure that you leave enough space. Valerie, as you can see here, is doing a turn in the middle of her return on the runway. That's something that you might be asked to do as well. It's a very good idea to practice that because although she makes it look easy, it can be complicated, especially if you need to do it in a certain direction that you're not used to turning. I know it sounds a little silly, but once you're out there and you're in those heels and you're in dresses and outfits that might not be very easy to walk in, it can be challenging. You want to make sure that you can handle whatever is thrown at you at a runway show. You never know what it's going to be. Okay, so now we're going to run you through some do's and don'ts as far as landing and posing at the end of the runway. Now Valerie's going to walk down to the end of the runway and she's going to show us what not to do when you get there. So you can see how she's sitting into her hips like that. There you go. So it almost looks like she's kind of hanging outside a 7-Eleven. Now you don't want to have that look when you're walking down the end of a runway. You want it to look natural, you want to look poised. You're showing the clothes, again, you're not showing off yourself. Now when she gets to the end of the runway this time, you're going to watch, see how she's sitting upright, her posture is better. And then she does that little turn. She just takes that step back in order to help her turn to walk back to the end of the runway. Now we're going to have her do it again. And you can see how she goes from one side, switches her weight to the other side, takes that one step and walks back. So now we're going to see Valerie come to the end of the runway. And you notice how she puts her weight first on her left, then on her right, and then she's going to take a step back with her left foot. That's going to enable her to do a smooth turn. Now we're going to do it again, maybe a little bit slower because I really want you to get a good view of what she's doing here. So she's putting her weight on her left, then she's going to switch to her right, and then take that step back with her left foot to help her turn and walk to the end of the runway. This is enabling her to show off the clothes. She's taking a pause so the photographers at the end of the runway can get their shot. The audience gets a really good view of those clothes that she's showing. And then it's a smooth transition to help her turn and walk back to the beginning of the runway so she can make her change for her next outfit. Always keep in mind that there could be added choreography. It really depends on the designer, on the producer of the show, and what it is that they're looking for. There could be two of you. They could ask you both to turn in opposite directions. They could ask you to turn into each other. Something else you want to keep in mind is that because your outfits might not fit you perfectly, you may have a long train, you might have shoes that are too big or too small for you. There's always that possibility that you may trip. There's always a possibility that something may happen. It could be a small runway with multiple models on at one time and you could potentially run into each other. With these things that happen and it being a live show with a live audience, always remember that regardless of what happens, you have to keep going. That show must go on. I know it's a cliche. I know it's something you hear time and time again, but it is absolutely true. When you're in the middle of a runway show and there's an incident, you trip, you fall, you bump into someone, keep going. Get back up and keep on keeping on. Even if you have to take that shoe off, even if you have to pull that dress up, you're gonna have to keep going.